When my child was admitted to the ICU, I wrote to my relatives. She's in critical condition. Please come if you can. I received only one reply from my cousin. None of my relatives came. I only got a message from my brother. I need help right away. I called him and I told him this. My daughter was fighting for her life in the ICU when my brother asked me to buy him a car. That was the moment something inside me finally broke. An hour earlier, I had sent a message to my entire family. She's in critical condition. Please come if you can. I sent it to the group chat that included my parents, my Aunt Carol, my brother Jake, and a few cousins. The same people who had called me dozens of times over the years asking for help with money, emergencies, and problems they somehow expected me to fix. I sat outside the ICU watching the screen of my phone. Nothing happened. 10 minutes passed, then 30. The hallway outside the intensive care unit was quiet, except for the sound of machines behind the doors and the occasional footsteps of nurses walking past. Every time someone walked down the corridor, I looked up, thinking maybe one of my relatives had arrived. No one did. Finally, a message appeared. It was from my cousin Ryan. I'm out of state, but I'm praying for you. That was the only reply. My parents said nothing. My Aunt Carol said nothing. My brother Jake said nothing. At first, I told myself they were probably driving to the hospital and just hadn't responded yet. It was almost evening. Traffic could be bad. People get busy. But the hours kept passing. I tried calling my mom. No answer. Called my dad. Straight to voicemail. Then I called Jake. He didn't pick up either. That was when the quiet hallway started to feel unbearable. My daughter Lily had been unconscious since the ambulance brought her in. Doctors kept using words like unstable and critical. They spoke in that careful tone people use when they don't want to promise anything. Kept checking my phone. Still nothing. Around midnight, it finally buzzed. For a second, I felt relief. I thought maybe someone was asking for the hospital address or telling me they were on the way. The message was from Jake. It said only 4 words. I need help right away. No question about Lily. Nor are you okay. Just that. I stared at the screen for a long time before I called him. Jake answered almost immediately. Hey, he said. I asked him if he had read my message about Lily. Yeah, he said. I saw it. There was a pause. Then he said something that made me realize I had been completely blind about my family for years. Listen, Harper. I need you to wire me some money tomorrow morning. Asked him why, and his answer made the quiet hospital suddenly feel very cold. Jake said he had found the car he had always wanted. First I thought he was joking. I waited for him to say something else. Something normal. Something like how's Lily? Or what did the doctor say, but he kept talking about the car. He told me it was a Mustang, a special edition. The owner was selling it cheap, but only if someone could pay immediately. Jake said he had already gone to see it that afternoon and he didn't want to lose the opportunity. I asked him if he understood what was happening right now. He said, of course he did. Then he said something that made my chest tighten. You're at the hospital anyway, Harper. There's nothing you can really do there tonight. For a few seconds, I couldn't speak. My daughter was unconscious behind a door 10 feet away from me. And my brother was explaining why it was convenient for me to send him money. I asked him if he had told our parents about Lily. He said they knew. That surprised me. I told him I had called them earlier and they didn't answer. Jake said they were busy. Busy with what I asked. He said Dad was helping Aunt Carol with something around the house. Then he went back to talking about the car. He told me the price, $28,000. He said the seller would hold it until the morning if Jake could confirm the payment. He sounded excited, like he had just discovered something amazing. I sat there in that hospital chair holding the phone listening to my brother plan the purchase of his dream car while my daughter was connected to machines inside the ICU. Finally, I asked him one simple question. Did you even think about coming here? There was a short silence. Then he said the hospital made him uncomfortable. I looked at the closed ICU doors. Then I looked down the empty hallway. No one from my family had come. Not my parents, not my aunt, not my brother. The only person who had sent a message was a cousin who lived 3 states away. Jake started explaining that he would pay me back eventually. He said the car was an investment. He said he needed the money urgently. I interrupted him. I asked him something I had never asked before. Jake, how much money do you think I've given you over the last 5 years? He didn't answer. I already knew the number because I had checked my bank statements once during tax season. It was a little over $90,000. Tuition payments, rent, emergency loans, car repairs, random transfers labeled "I'll send it back soon." Jake finally said something. "You earn a lot more than the rest of us, Harper." That sentence changed everything because in that moment, I realized something that had been sitting right in front of me for years. To my family, I wasn't a sister. I wasn't a daughter. I was just the person with the bank account. And Jake was about to find out what happened when that bank account closed. After Jake said that, I didn't argue with him. I just asked him one question. "Which account were you planning to use?" He sounded relieved immediately, like he thought the conversation was going his way. "The savings account," he said. "The one you set up for me." Of course, he meant the account I had opened 2 years earlier when he went back to college. I had been transferring money there every semester so he could pay tuition and living expenses without worrying. He had never paid $1 into it himself. Jake started explaining how much he needed me to send in the morning. I let him finish. Then I told him something very simple. "Don't worry about it. I'll handle it tomorrow." He said thanks and started talking about the car again. He was already planning the drive he would take once he bought it. While he talked, I looked through the glass window of the ICU door. I could see Lily's room. Machines were blinking beside her bed. A nurse walked past me and gave a small nod. Jake was still talking about horsepower and mileage. Finally, I ended the call. The hallway became quiet again. For the next hour, I sat there thinking about the last 10 years of my life. The constant calls for help, the emergencies, the promises to pay me back later. And the strange thing was that I had never really questioned it. I had a good job in tech after my husband Daniel died. I earned more money than anyone else in my family. Helping them had felt natural at first. But sitting there outside the ICU, something became painfully clear. Not one of them had shown up. Around 2 o'clock in the morning, my phone buzzed again. This time, it was the family group chat. Jake had written a message. "Does anyone know if Harper is sending the money tomorrow? The guy selling the Mustang wants confirmation." For a moment, I thought I had read it wrong. Then my Aunt Carol replied. "She usually helps. Harper will probably take care of it." My father added a thumbs up emoji. No one mentioned Lily. No one asked how she was doing. I stared at the messages until the screen dimmed. That was when the anger finally arrived. Not the loud kind, the quiet kind that settles in your chest and makes everything very clear. I opened my banking app. The account Jake had been using still had the tuition money for next semester sitting in it. $22,000. I transferred every dollar back to my main account. Then I froze the account completely. That was only the first step because Jake didn't know something important. I wasn't just paying for his expenses. I was also the person paying his university. And the next phone call I made was going to change his plans for that Mustang very quickly. At 8 o'clock in the morning, I called Jake's university. I had paid his tuition directly for the past 3 semesters, so the billing office knew my name. The woman who answered the phone pulled up his account almost immediately. I told her there had been a mistake. I said I would no longer be responsible for Jake's tuition or any future payments connected to his account. She asked if I wanted to cancel the upcoming semester payment that was scheduled for next week. I said yes. It took less than 2 minutes. When the call ended, Jake officially had no tuition funding and no savings account. I felt strangely calm. Around 9, my phone started vibrating non-stop. Jake was calling. I let it ring. Then messages started arriving. "Harper, what happened to the account? Why is it locked? Did the bank freeze it?" I didn't answer. A few minutes later, another message appeared. "The dealership is waiting." I need the money today. That one almost made me laugh. I was still sitting in the hospital hallway outside Lily's room. The doctors had told me she was stable but still unconscious. They were running more tests and watching her closely. My daughter had spent the entire night in intensive care. Jake was worried about a car dealership. My phone buzzed again. This time it was my mother. I finally answered. She didn't ask how Lily was doing. Her first sentence was simple. Jake said something is wrong with his bank account. For a moment, I closed my eyes. Then I asked her a question. Did you get my message yesterday about Lily? He said yes. I waited for the next sentence. It never came. Instead, she said Jake was upset because the car seller might give the Mustang to someone else if the payment didn't go through. That was the moment I stopped feeling guilty about what I was about to do next. Because Jake losing a car wasn't even close to the biggest problem my family was about to face. There was something else they had forgotten. The house they were all living in. My parents, my brother, my Aunt Carol. They had been living there for 3 years after my husband Daniel died. They treated it like their home, but legally it had always been mine. And that morning, while sitting outside the ICU, I opened my contacts and called a realtor I knew. I told him something that made him pause for a second. I want to sell my house immediately. Then I gave him the address, the same address where my entire family was living. The realtor's name was Mark. I had worked with him years earlier when Daniel and I bought an investment property. When I gave him the address, he recognized it immediately. That's a great house, he said. Are you sure you want to sell it that quickly? As I said, he asked if anyone was living there. I told him my relatives were staying there temporarily. That wasn't exactly a lie. They had moved in after Daniel died 3 years earlier because they said they needed time to get back on their feet. 3 years later, they were still there. Mark said he could bring potential buyers that same week if I wanted. I told him sooner would be better. He said he could come by the house that afternoon with 2 clients who were already looking for property in that neighborhood. Perfect, I said. After the call ended, I looked at my phone again. There were now 23 missed calls from Jake. My parents had also called several times. Messages kept appearing. Harper, call me right now. Why is Jake's account frozen? The dealership won't wait all day. None of them mentioned Lily. None of them asked how their granddaughter was doing. Around noon, I finally opened the family group chat. Everyone was talking about Jake's bank account. My Aunt Carol wrote that the bank must have made a mistake. My father said I should call them immediately and fix it. Jake wrote that he was already at the dealership and the seller was getting impatient. I read everything quietly. Then I typed one sentence. The account is not frozen. For a few seconds, no one replied. Then Jake wrote back, "What do you mean?" I answered. I closed it. The chat exploded instantly. Jake started sending message after message asking why I would do that. My father asked if something had happened with the bank. My mother wrote that Jake needed that money. I let them talk. Then I added another message. I also canceled Jake's tuition payments this morning. That was when the phone call started again. Jake called 5 times in less than a minute. My father called, then my mother. I didn't answer any of them. Instead, I wrote one more message in the group chat. There's something else you all need to know. For a moment, the chat went quiet. Then, I sent the final message. I'm selling the house. This time, the silence lasted longer. Almost a full minute passed before my Aunt Carol wrote the first response. What house? I stared at the screen. Then, I replied with 6 words that finally made everything clear to them. The one you're living in. The messages started coming so fast I could barely read them. Jake was the first one to react. What do you mean you're selling the house? Then my mom Harper stopped joking. This isn't funny. My dad wrote 3 messages in a row asking what was going on. I didn't answer immediately. At that exact moment, a doctor walked out of the ICU and called my name. For a second, everything else disappeared. I stood up so quickly the chair slid back across the floor. He told me Lily had finally woken up. She was weak and confused, but stable. They were still monitoring her closely, but the danger had passed. For the first time in 2 days, I could breathe normally. I sat beside her bed for a long time while she slept again. The machines were still there, but they sounded less frightening now. When I finally looked at my phone again, there were over 70 messages waiting. My family had clearly figured out that I wasn't joking. My Aunt Carol was asking where they were supposed to go. My father was demanding an explanation. Jake was still talking about the car at first, but after a while, his messages turned angry. I opened the group chat and typed one sentence. "Pack your things and get out of my house." That message ended the discussion. For the next hour, my phone rang non-stop. My parents tried calling. Jake tried calling. Even my Aunt Carol tried several times. I didn't answer any of them. Instead, I called Mark and confirmed that he could show the house that afternoon. He told me 2 buyers were already on their way. Later that evening, my parents finally realized what was happening. They drove to the hospital and demanded to see me. My father asked why I was doing this. I told him the truth. "Yesterday, my daughter was in critical condition and none of you came." No one had an answer for that. Jake started saying something about how he didn't think it was that serious. My mom said they thought I had everything under control. I didn't argue because the decision had already been made. Within 2 weeks, the house was sold. My parents, Jake and Aunt Carol, had to find somewhere else to live. Jake also had to figure out how to pay for his own university for the first time in his life. Meanwhile, Lily recovered faster than the doctors expected. One afternoon, while she was still in the hospital, she told me something she had been talking about for years. She said she still wanted to live in New York someday. That was when I realized something. There was nothing holding us in California anymore. So, a month later, we bought 2 plane tickets. My family tried contacting me several more times before we left. They wanted explanations. They wanted to talk about the house and the money, but there was nothing left to explain. For years, they had treated me like their wallet. Now, that wallet was gone. Lily and I boarded the plane to New York early in the morning. As the city disappeared below the clouds, I felt something I hadn't felt in a very long time. Relief. For the first time, our lives belonged only to us. Belonged only to us.